Hello everybody, my name is Erin and this is Waiting Moose. Tonight I'm going to be doing a book review for you about Heartsick by Cain. This book I recently listened to on audiobook, so this will include a bit of a review of the audiobook version because the audio can seriously affect the enjoyment of a book. Heartsick is the first book in a series of books. I believe there's 5 books in the series by Cain, and it's the Archie Sheridan and Gretchen Lowell series. This book starts out with Archie Sheridan being a cop who is on a medical leave. He had been kidnapped in his last case by the serial killer that he was tracking down, and when that happened, she tortured him. Basically destroyed his life, and he's got like a lot of PTSD, he's suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, there's just a lot going on there for him. So this book really kind of touches on some of the mental illness aspects around that, but not really, right? So Archie isn't dealing so well with those situations, and you can see that in what he does. He is still visiting Gretchen Lowell, just so you know, is actually the serial killer who he put in jail who was put in jail after she kidnapped him and tortured him. That's not a spoiler, by the way, that you learn. That's right away. He still sees her. He goes and he sees her in jail because that's a spoiler, I think, so I'm not going to get into that. But the book is very gory. That was very, very apparent immediately. Very, very gory, and it leans more toward the horror part of the thriller rather than the police procedural part of the thriller, even though it does follow the investigation of the crime and, you know, tracks that throughout the book as Archie and his task force are trying to track down another serial killer. The past and the present are woven in this with what appear to be some flashbacks or something. It's hard to tell in the audiobook exactly what if it's just telling that second part of the story or if it's a flashback for Archie when he's thinking back to his time being tortured by Gretchen Lowell. So just so you know, it details scenes of torture from his captivity. His old partner, the person who was his partner when he was abducted and tortured, is in this book again. Is in this book. His ex-wife is in this book. It's this mixing of the two timelines, and that was really interesting. I like that these two timelines kind of combining and turning into this disturbing, completely disturbing psychological thriller where Archie is investigating the disappearance of all of these school-aged girls. The press nicknames the killer, the serial killer, as the after-school strangler, and Archie is investigating. He agrees to go back to work only if a reporter is assigned to the case with him. And his plan there backfires a bit on him. I won't really say what his plan was there. Wow, it's hard to talk about that without spoilers. Okay. Anyway, so he demands that this reporter is brought along, and her name is Susan Ward. She's pink-haired, she's a bit of a rebel, she's definitely non-traditional. How's that? She's not, like, it's not bringing in anything about homosexuality or anything like that, but she's definitely non-traditional when you look at her life and her lifestyle. In the way, as thrillers go, this one was very well done. I was definitely on the edge of my seat until the end of the book. Well, not the end of the book, but until the unveiling. When you find out who is responsible, it's like, oh, but how? And then, you know, you get of course, the explanation, as you do in these kind of books. But I found that after that happened, there was a lot of book left. And it went on and on and on, and it annoyed me. And part of this, I truly believe, is because the author, sorry, not the author, but the narrator, the person reading the audiobook, irritated me. Now, the problem is I took this out of the library on CD, which means that I did not have the ability to speed it up. And I typically listen to my books at 1.5 to 2 times speed because I find that the speed that the they're read at tends to be a little slow and sometimes will put me to sleep. So I typically try to fast forward it. I was driving in a car, so falling asleep wasn't really a problem. I don't tend to fall asleep behind the wheel. But I did find that when I can fast forward, or not fast forward, but when I can speed up the books, sometimes the narrator's inflections or emphasis or way of speaking isn't quite as detrimental to the book as it would be if I was listening to it at a slower pace. And in this case, I found she did a good job of Archie's voice, because they often will, you know, change their voice to represent different characters' voices. And she did okay with Archie, and she did okay with some of the other characters. But when it came to Gretchen, I didn't like the way she did the voice. And it wasn't because I didn't like Gretchen, but I really didn't think that Gretchen, the character that is Gretchen, would talk that way and have and just kind of the inflection and the emphasis in places seemed completely wrong. And her voice didn't match up with the character for me, and it irritated me because I was like, this is wrong. It actually made me like angry when I was listening to it, but not because of what Gretchen was saying or because of what was happening, but because the voice was so wrong for that character. So I will not be reading the next book. I will not be listening to any more of these books, obviously, because Gretchen is a major character as we go on. And I am not going to listen to this narrator do it again, because no. That actually, toward the end, because at the end there was quite a bit of scenes with Gretchen after we find out who the murderer is. And quite a long scene, I guess, with Gretchen. And in that scene, I just wanted her to shut up. And I felt like it went on and on and on. And I'm not sure if it really did, or if it was the narrator's voice that just made me want to punch my window. And I'm not a violent person. I'm not. So yeah, that was an interesting part of that book. If you like a gory psychological thriller, horror-ish kind of book, this one's for you. I mean, there is some disturbing scenes in here, and I cried at one point. It's not a happy, feel-good book. It is disturbed, it's twisted, it's gory, and I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars, simply because the audiobook ruined parts of it for me. It truly did. And then the ending went on far too long. So that's really how I felt about the book. I have read Chelsea Cain before. I believe this is her first series. I know I should have checked that first, but I didn't. I've read one of her more recent books, and this is kind of the style she writes in, and it's interesting because she creates a sympathetic character, but they're very flawed. Which is really kind of interesting. I like that. Oh, there's something else I wanted to say. There are 5 books in this series. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. I really think even though I gave this 3 out of 5 stars, if I'd read the paper book, it probably would have been higher. And I think that if you like the psychological thriller, the horror aspect, the gory bits, if you like all of that, this book is probably right up your alley and you'll like it, but I don't know if you should listen to it, or if you do, listen to it on some sort of medium where you can accelerate the speed that you're listening to it at, so you aren't as affected by some of the narrator's idiosyncrasies as I was. So that is how I felt about Chelsea Cain's Heartsick. I will be doing more reviews soon. So hopefully these are working out for you. Bye.